Good morning, students. Today, in the second class of hearing physiology, we will discuss the structure and function of inner ear physiology and its contribution in hearing mechanism. Inner ear, performs two main functions: maintenance of balance and hearing. And for these two distinct functions, there are two set of structures within the inner ear. For balance and equilibrium, there is vestibular apparatus comprising of semicircular canal, utricle and saccule, and for hearing, there is cochlea. Both are housed within the petrous part of the temporal bone. Now for hearing mechanism, we will discuss the structure and function of cochlea. And vestibular apparatus and maintenance of balance will be discussed in another class. Now let us take cochlea, its detailed structure and hearing transduction mechanism. Cochlea is basically the house for the receptor organ of hearing, that is organ of Corti. And I have already mentioned what is the function of organ of Corti. Organ of Corti converts mechanical sound energy into nerve impulse, that is electrical energy, which can travel along the auditory nerve up to the auditory cortex for detailed processing. Now what is cochlea? Cochlea is basically combination of fluid filled tubal structures. If we see in elongated form, cochlea is combination of three elongated tubes. From above downwards there is scala vestibuli, scala media and scala tympani. You are seeing in the diagram. Now scala vestibuli above and scala tympani below are connected at the apex through an opening called helicotrema. But scala media is a closed tube situated in between these two, and scala media contains a distinct type of fluid which is different from the fluid situated in scala vestibuli and scala tympani. Scala vestibuli and scala tympani contains a fluid called perilymph. Perilymph contains sodium and potassium similar to the extent that is present in extracellular fluid. But scala media contains a fluid called endolymph, which is rich in potassium ion, almost 140 milliequivalent per liter, and you know this composition is similar to that of intracellular fluid. That means there is always a potential difference between scala vestibuli and tympani and scala media fluid that I will be describing in subsequent slides. Now as far as the structure of cochlea is concerned, this three tubal combination of cochlea is basically in reality is present in a coiled structure form. These three fluid filled tubes, almost 35 millimeter long, it is coiled around a bony stem called modiolus, and on cross section it looks like this. The above channel it is scala media and below it is scala tympani. And you are clearly seeing that within the scala media there is location of hearing receptor organ, that is organ of Corti. There are membranous partition between these three compartments. In between scala vestibuli and scala media there is situation of Reisner's membrane. Between scala tympani and scala media there is location of basilar membrane, upon which the organ of Corti is actually situated. Now if this is the structure or cross section of cochlea. Now let us have a look at the cellular disposition of the organ of Corti itself. Organ of Corti, which is situated on the basilar membrane in the scala media, is basically combination of two distinct sets of hair cells. One is called outer hair cell, one is called inner hair cell. And from where these names are derived? These names are according to their disposition in respect of their position to the tunnel of Corti. You are seeing a tunnel like structure in the middle, white tunnel like structure which is bound on both sides by two elongated cells or rods of Corti. Now outer to this tunnel of Corti, the sets of hair cells called outer hair cells, which are more numerous in number, arranged in 3 to 5 rows. Absolute number is also higher, almost 20,000 per year. But inner hair cells, which are situated inert to the tunnel of Corti, medial side to the tunnel of Corti, it is arranged in single row, and absolute number is less, that is 3500, almost 3500 in each year. There is another specific difference between the disposition and structure of inner and outer hair cells. You are seeing that there are certain hair like projections coming out from the upper portions of the hair cells, both outer and inner. These hair like projections are called stereocilia. For outer hair cells, the stereocilia are embedded in another gelatinous viscous membrane called tectorial membrane, which is situated just above the hair cell's top, and tectorial membrane is bound medially and it is free laterally, and its disposition is at an angle with the basilar membrane. The tip of the hair cells, that is stereocilia coming out of the outer hair cells, are embedded directly to the tectorial membrane. So whenever there is any movement of the outer hair cells upward, there will be a shearing force generated between basilar membrane and the tectorial membrane, which bends the stereocilia of outer hair cells to any specific side. But one thing to be noted, that inner hair cells give rise to stereocilia which actually is not embedded into the tectorial membrane. That means only movement of inner hair cells may not deviate the stereocilia to any specific side, as it is not directly fixed to the tectorial membrane. For its movement, some other mechanism or some other contributions from other type of cells are necessary, that I will be describing in subsequent slides. So this much we have learned, that in organ of Corti there is two specific sets of cells, outer and inner hair cells. Hair like projections coming out from the hair cells is called stereocilia. Stereocilia of outer hair cells are embedded into the tectorial membrane, but stereocilia of inner hair cell is not. Now besides these hair cells, there are other supporting cells present in the surrounding which help the hair cells nutritionally or for mechanical support, and they also help in potassium turnover or potassium recycling. Now if I detail and if we analyze the structure of the stereocilia in detail, we can have this type of disposition. Let's have a look. The stereocilia of both inner and outer hair cells are arranged in such a way that there occurs a gradual increase in the height of stereocilia from one side to other, and there is presence of a special type of spring-like connecting link from the tip of the shorter cilia to the shaft of the adjacent longer one. This connecting link is associated with some ion channels, and these ion channels gets opened up whenever there is any stretching of this spring-like portion. That means whenever the stereocilia are bent towards the longer one, towards the side of the longer one, the spring-like structure gets stretched and the ion channels associated with it gets opened up, and it allows entry of some cations like potassium, calcium within the hair cells through the longer stereocilia. This much at this point I will be describing in detail while describing the hearing transduction mechanism. That means stereocilia, each of the stereocilia is connected to its adjacent longer one with the help of tip links. Tip links is just not a connection, but it is associated with some ion channels which are mechanosensitive. That means whenever there is any mechanical stretch, this ion channels gets opened up and allows entry of cations like potassium, calcium within the hair cells, leading to its depolarization. Now whenever the stimulation passes, stretching is over, this tip links comes downwards so that the tension is released by means of some molecular motors or myosin molecules, and the channels gets closed. As these are mechanosensitive, the stretch is over, the channel is closed. Now this is the specific arrangement of the stereocilia present over the hair cells. Now after discussing this structure of organ of Corti, let's have an idea what actually happens whenever there comes any specific sound waves. If we take the elongated structure of cochlea by means of rocking movement of the footplate of the stapes or the hinge like movement of the footplate of the stapes, the mechanical sound energy, sound waves, enters into the fluid of the ear. First it enters into the scala vestibuli, that is within the perilymph. It travels both horizontally towards the helicotrema as well as it undulates vertically, gives rise to up and down movement of the Reisner's membrane, and Reisner's membrane transmits that vibration through scala media into the basilar membrane. And you know, over the basilar membrane there is location of specific receptor organ, that is organ of Corti. So this green one gets undulated by the vibration transmitted from the Reisner's membrane. Basilar membrane along with the organ of Corti moves up and down along with the sound waves, and there occurs stimulation of the hair cells and specific hearing transduction mechanism. Now this sound waves gradually passes to the helicotrema, that is the apex, and ultimately it passes on to the round window and gives rise to bulging of the round window towards the middle ear cavity, so that the pressure wave by the sound energy can be accommodated. Now what actually happens when basilar membrane moves ups and down, let us see. I have already mentioned you that whenever basilar membrane moves ups and down, the organ of Corti containing the hair cell also moves upward and downwards. Now as the stereocilia from the outer hair cells are directly embedded to the tectorial membrane, with upward movement of the basilar membrane, the stereocilia of the outer hair cell gets deviated to the side which is away from the limbus. Limbus means this medial portion where the tectorial membrane is attached. Now whenever these hair cells moves away from the limbus, there are stretching of the tip links and opening up of the potassium channels and entry of potassium within the hair cells. And you know potassium entry means what? Stimulation of the hair cells or depolarization. Depolarization of what? Depolarization of outer hair cells. Now as soon as the outer hair cells are depolarized, there occurs activation of certain other protein molecules called prestin. This prestin molecules leads to contraction of the outer hair cells further. Contraction of the outer hair cells leads to some enhanced upward movement of the basilar membrane. Enhanced upward movement of the basilar membrane leads to a fluid current which allows some fluid to pass underneath the tectorial membrane, which further leads to movement of the stereocilia of the inner hair cells away from the limbus. What I actually want to mean that stereocilia of the inner hair cells are not directly moved or deviated by the movement of the basilar membrane itself, because hair cells of, that is stereocilia of inner hair cells, are not embedded into the tectorial membrane directly. So for its movement, mere upward movement of basilar membrane is not sufficient. There must be some other mechanism which is brought about by the fluid current which is generated by the accentuated upliftment of basilar membrane by the contraction of outer hair cells, which is possible by means of the protein molecules called prestin. Whenever there is any mutation or deactivation of prestin molecules, it has been found that there develops type of deafness. And prestin molecules are responsible for capabilities of humans to perceive even the sound of lower intensity. Otherwise, it would have been impossible. Now, what happens whenever there occurs stimulation of outer and inner hair cells? Whenever there is stimulation of outer and inner hair cells, there occurs entry of potassium ions within the hair cells. And you know, entry of potassium ion leads to depolarization of the cells. Whenever this depolarization reaches the threshold, there occurs opening up of voltage gated calcium channels and entry of calcium in excess amount within the hair cells and release of a specific neurotransmitter called glutamate. Now this glutamate release will lead to generation of action potential that can travel through the nerve fibers which arise from the lower surface of the hair cells, both inner and outer. This nerve fiber constitute the auditory nerve, which through different relay station in the brainstem, thalamus ultimately reach the auditory cortex, both primary and association auditory cortex, for hearing perception. Now one thing I must tell, that the nerve fibers arising from the inner hair cells basically constitute the afferent auditory nerve fibers. They travel upwards to reach the auditory cortex for hearing perception. But the maximum fibers of the outer hair cells are efferent by nature. They do not carry the sensation from ear upwards, rather they bring back some information from the higher relay station to the ear for the modulation of sound energy in different forms, and activities of inner hair cells thereby modified. That means auditory nerve that runs as a whole is basically combination of both afferent and efferent fibers. Afferent fibers arise from the inner hair cells and efferent fibers come to innervate the outer hair cells, but they run in a same bunch in the cochlear division of the vestibulocochlear nerve, that is 8th cranial nerve. Now let us have a look what is the course of this auditory nerve, what constitute and how this nerve runs. Auditory nerve fibers afferents from the inner hair cells and efferents from the outer hair cells, after getting generated, they come out with their cell bodies in the spiral ganglion, from where the axons arise and move as vestibulocochlear nerve, with their first realization in the dorsal and ventral cochlear nucleus. In the diagram you are clearly seeing that dorsal and ventral cochlear nucleus. From cochlear nucleus the axons arise, which either run ipsilaterally or to the opposite side to join a bunch of fiber called lateral lemniscus. Some fibers join lateral lemniscus of the other side and some runs ipsilaterally. Now lateral lemniscus ends in lateral lemniscus running on the both sides ends in superior olivary complex. Superior olivary complex then terminates on nucleus of lateral lemniscus. Then it runs upwards further to the midbrain in the inferior colliculus, from there to the medial geniculate body of the thalamus, and thalamic projection thereafter reaches the auditory cortex. Now this relay stations, cochlear nuclei, then superior olivary complex, nucleus of lateral lemniscus, inferior colliculus, medial geniculate body and auditory cortex. In this entire course, one thing is to be noted, that there is huge projection from both of the ears to both of the sides. That means each sided auditory nerve bears representation from both sided ear. So deafness, if deafness to occur, there must be damage to the most peripheral part, that is at the level of the cochlear nuclei or even below to that, because afterwards there will be representation from both of the ears. So only single sided information is not carried by auditory nerve of any side. This is one of the important speciality of the auditory pathway. Now after reaching the auditory cortex, the hearing information is processed in primary auditory area, primary auditory cortex, which is situated in the superior temporal gyrus, situated into the temporal lobe, also called Hessel's gyrus, from where the information is further passed on to the auditory association cortex or Brodmann's area number 22 and 42. In this regard, another area must be mentioned, that is Wernicke's area, which is mainly associated with auditory processing of language or speech, where the meaning of the auditory perception is actually extracted. Whatever we hear, the theme of that, meaning of that is processed or extracted by the vernix area, and it is most prominent in the left hemisphere. And this vernix area is one of the auditory association area. Now, after discussing the anatomical course of auditory pathway, I must highlight some speciality of auditory course. First, I have already mentioned that there is relay of fibers from both of the ears to each sided auditory nerve. So, unilateral deafness can be caused only by lesion involving the most peripheral parts, cochlear nerve or even below. Next is, there is afferent as well as efferent projections from different higher relay stations into the auditory nerve. So, not only it carries the hearing sensation to the brain, but also brings back some modulatory information from the higher centers to the hair cells of the inner ear. Next speciality of auditory pathway is that there is tonotopic organization of the fibers in the auditory nerve. That means fibers carrying auditory sensation for different frequency of sounds are arranged distinctly. There is special tonotopic segregation or organization of the fibers. So, even before reaching the brain, there is clear arrangement for frequency discrimination in the auditory nerve itself. This same type of tonotopic organization is also present in the auditory cortex. For specific frequency, there is specific area designated in the brain on stimulation which can perceive a specific type of frequency. Even in the basilar membrane, we will be learning later, there is special arrangement by which the frequency can be discriminated. So, these are basically the specialities of auditory pathway. Now, let us have some clear idea about the membrane potentials of the hair cells and the associated structures. I have already mentioned that there is gross potential difference between endolymph and perilymph situated in the scala media and scala vestibuli and scala tympani because of the difference in the potassium concentration. And this potential difference between perilymph and endolymph is called endocochlear potential. This endocochlear potential can be measured by placing an electrode within the scala vestibuli and another within the scala media. How much is this? This is almost plus 80 millivolt. That means scala media is positive by 80 millivolt to scala vestibuli and scala tympani. That means endolymph is plus 80 millivolt positive to perilymph. Now, whenever there occurs stimulation of the hair cells by bending of the stereocilia away from the limbus, by the stretching of tip links and entry of potassium ions within the hair cells, there occurs depolarization of the hair cells, and opposite occurs whenever the hair cells bend to the opposite side. There will be hyperpolarization, and in a given phase of time, if we can record the summated receptor potential generated at the hair cells, the cumulative receptor potential during the passage of sound waves, we can call it as cochlear microphonic potential. It is the summated receptor potential in a given time. Some of the hair cells may be depolarized, some of them may be hyperpolarized. The summated one is called cochlear microphonic potential. It is basically a generator potential because it is graded in nature. It does not have any latent period or any refractory period. It is not propagated, and it is graded, can be added up, and when by adding up it reaches the threshold value, there develops action potential by release of neurotransmitter. Now this action potential follows Alornan law and travels through the auditory nerve. Now one thing is to be noted that resting membrane potential of these hair cells, which are birthed at the lower portion into the perilimb and at the upper portion into the endolimb of scala media. At the lower end, the resting membrane potential, that is the potential difference from inside to outside, it is almost minus 60 millivolt. That means inside of the hair cells is 60 millivolt minus to that of perilimb. But at the upper end, the hair cells is birthed in endolimb of the scala media, and we already know that endolimb of scala media is plus 80 millivolt positive to that of perilimb. So how much is the potential difference between the interior of the hair cells and the endolimb of scala media? It is almost minus 60 minus plus 80, that is minus 140 millivolt. I want to mean that inside of the hair cells at the upper end is 140 millivolt negative to that of endolymph in the scala media. This huge potential difference between inside and outside of the hair cells and absence of any specific concentration gradient of potassium ions, because I have already mentioned that endolymph contains high potassium ions, which is almost similar to that of intercellular fluid. So almost absent concentration gradient and huge electrical gradient makes these cells very much sensitive even to the slightest amount of ionic movement. Even the slightest amount of hair bending, stereocilia bending and entry of potassium ions makes these cells stimulated and there develops generation of cochlear microphonic potential. Now, after the potassium enters within the hair cells, they are recycled back through the supporting cells and further secreted from the stria vascularis into the scala media, and the cycle is continued. Now, after the action potential is already generated, it travels along the auditory nerve through different relay station, reaches the auditory cortex, where not only the perception of sound occurs, but the detailed analysis of different critical attributes like frequency of sound, intensity of sound, timbre or the quality of sound, etc. take place. So, the detailed processing of sound quality and frequency discrimination done at different level we will be learning in our next discussion session. So, this much today. Thank you all.